When your family thinks you are a joke, the only honest currency left is the look on their faces when you cash the check. Asterisk, I remember the sound of that check folding into my palm. Thin paper, crisp, like a dare. 60 million things could have happened in the space between that fold and the first step out the door. Instead, there was silence. The kind of silence that smells like old coffee and mildew and something you once loved but stopped caring for. Asterisk, my name is Jonah Reyes. I grew up in a split-level house that sagged on one side like it had given up. In the summers, the sun hit the aluminum siding so hard the light looked like it might peel away. My father worked nights at a factory across town. My mother folded linens at a hotel until her hands guessed the rhythm without her eyes. We ate whatever was cheap and stayed late at the kitchen table, doing arithmetic like it was a prayer. Asterisk, I was, by family consensus, the exception. That is a soft word for someone they called a disappointment in private and an interesting story in public. I flunked 2 years of community college. I quit a string of jobs, a grocery stocker, a parking attendant, a temp at an insurance office where the copier had learned to eat pages just for spite. I dated the wrong people, believed the wrong people, and wore hoodies older than me. I asked for rent extensions with a face like I had gotten into some small, unavoidable trouble. The kind you tell yourself will sort itself out. Asterisk, one Sunday in June, in front of my sister and 2 cousins and my mother who was pretending not to watch, my father placed a check on the kitchen table. The amount was written in the bright, unreadable scrawl of someone who thought a number could close a wound. Asterisk, $50,000. For our family, that was a car. For me, it was a statement. Asterisk, you are betting me, my father said. He folded his hands like he was at a church council meeting. You will fail. We will take that money, and when you fail, we will be right. Asterisk, my sister laughed. It was the small, precise laugh people use when they want to slice through an awkwardness. You always do, she said, as if she were continuing a sentence about the weather. Asterisk, my cousins nodded. Family tended to choose sides before the first argument began. This was no different. The check sat between us like a beast waiting for instructions. Asterisk, I could have burned it. I could have crumpled it and mailed it back with a note that said, here's your prophecy come true. I could have walked out and let them have the last word, as they so often did. Pride is loud. It wants to be dramatic. But that night, in the kitchen where the hum of the refrigerator sounded like a distant heartbeat, I put the check into my wallet. Asterisk, I kept it because I wanted to watch them believe their own story. I kept it because if I lost, I wanted my failure to be clean and obvious. I wanted to give them a show they could remember. And if, by some strange turn, I won, I wanted the money to be an insult returned to sender. Asterisk, that bet became my barometer. Every misstep I made after that was marked against the check. Every late payment and every bounced rent notice became a line in a ledger that I read in the dark. I slept in the living room on a thin mattress some nights, the TV humming soft reruns in a language I could no longer afford to watch without wincing. I ate ramen the way some people eat caviar, with ritual and reverence. Asterisk, revenge is a slow fire. It starts in the petty details. I learned to make lists. Not the kind of lists you make for groceries. The kind that are surgical. Step 1, make money. Step 2, don't lose it. Step 3, never let them see you sweat. Step 4, plan. Asterisk, people talk about revenge like it is a single moment. They imagine a glass thrown across a room, a climactic shout, the music swelling. That is not how my story unfolded. It was small adjustments, one day after another. The way water erodes rock. Asterisk, I got a job driving for a courier company. Mornings began before the light. I learned the city by the way it opened its eyelids. I noticed who was sleeping on benches, who had coffee in paper cups, who moved like they owned the sidewalks. I noticed opportunities in the way other people ignored things. Business is a lesson in observation if you are willing to learn. Asterisk, delivery work taught me punctuality and the economy of motion. I drove through neighborhoods that on paper were nothing but numbers and zoning codes, but in practice were theater. There were houses with manicured lawns and pocket knives stuck under doormats. Trailers with dogs that barked like they had a secret. I'd drop off a package and watch the person who signed their name flick a cigarette, like a slow-motion apology. Asterisk, on my breaks I took online courses. Recommendation algorithms are honest in one way. They learn what you look at. I studied marketing, then sales, then data analytics. I learned the language of numbers. It is not as glamorous as people think. It is a series of small certainties. You analyze patterns. You remove the noise. You repeat what works. Asterisk, at night, under a streetlight that kept blinking like a tired warning, I wrote emails to small businesses. I offered to help them find customers. My first clients were the kind of people every other agency ignored. A backyard bakery with no website. A tattoo artist whose Instagram stopped at 6 posts. A barber shop with loyalty cards that smelled of cigar smoke. Asterisk, I did work that mattered to me and ignored what didn't. I learned to be honest with clients in ways that made them trust me. One by one, I grew their sales by percentages that pleased them and annoyed their competitors. Word spread, as it always does, through the mouths of grateful people. I hired a friend who could code in exchange for half my fries at lunch. He said yes, and then he stopped calling me a joke. 2 years went by. Money dripped in, not enough to change everything, but enough to change some things. I paid off a debt here. I bought my mother a new set of pots. I replaced the cracked mirror in our bathroom because the one we had a spiderweb crack that made it feel like the house had been stitched together. But the check on the table in the kitchen was still a quiet presence in my back pocket. It had become a talisman and a ledger. I had told no one what I planned to do with it. Secrets are currency in revenge. The element of surprise is more valuable than the thing itself. I started a company on nights and weekends. Nothing fancy. A name, a website, a promise that read like a soldier's oath. We did not have funding, but we had a product, a way for small local stores to find customers online without getting eaten by the big platforms. The mechanics were a blend of cheap tech and stubbornness. We made it work by being useful. People do not love products. They love solutions. By the time the first investor called, I had already intellectually cashed the check. Investors smell potential the way dogs smell fear. They ask questions that sounded like tests, projections, churn rates, acquisition costs. I answered with spreadsheets that were, for once, true. I sided with truth because it had a way of being bigger than any lie. I learned to let data do the boasting for me. The investor looped in others. We raised a small seed round. The money did not make us immortal, but it made the company breathe. We hired more people. Stress arrived like an expected guest. There were nights when I sat on the stairs of the office and let my head fall back against cold drywall, listening to the undercurrent of keyboards and tired breath. I thought of the check during those nights. It sat like a promise on a kitchen table 1,000 miles away, in a life I had not yet outgrown. Family dynamics do not reset when you change your bank balance. They reassign roles. Some of my relatives began to treat me like a fragile relic that they had always meant to protect. My father called once after a press mention. He started asking about numbers in a voice that sounded like he had just learned a new word. My sister invited me to dinner and told me about the niece I did not know existed. Those conversations had a new edge to them. I could tell what they were weighing. Ego, access, opportunity. Then came the acquisition offers. They were polite. They came wrapped in suits. People with more money than sense assumed a startup is an object to be purchased, like a car with extra mileage. We could have sold early. It would have been safe. It would have been boring, but there is a threshold with money where you can buy freedom, and then again where you can buy influence. I wanted influence, if only to rearrange the furniture in the room my family had sat in and called my destiny. When we closed the deal, I kept one ritual. On the day the funds cleared, I drove across town to the grocery store where my father still shopped. He was trying to balance a bag of oranges and a coupon that had expired. Everyone else in his life softened. I did not. I hugged him like someone does when they want to break a brittle thing. You did it, he said, and it was relief wrapped in surprise. I had always seen his surprise like a hand reaching for a light switch that did not belong to him. I did, I said. I meant it, and I meant something else too. A week later, I went home. The house smelled like the past. My mother had made coffee that was too strong. The check was still on the table, folded, waiting. They had not cashed it. The fact of the bet was now a piece of loose furniture in a house that had not yet decided if it belonged to a different era. I slid the check out of my wallet. I could have written a check in return. I could have left a note that said, "Here is your 50,000 back with interest." But the best revenge is not petty. The best revenge is artful. The best revenge is unnecessary and unmistakable. So I took the check and I called a lawyer. I filed a notice. Small claims courts are where grudges either die quietly or mutate into legal instruments. I put the bet where public record could reach it. I sued my family, not for the money itself, for breach of contract, for humiliation, for what they had done with a father's voice and a folded check. They laughed, as families do when the world seems absurd. They thought it was a joke. They thought it would die in some clerk's tray. They were wrong, in the way people who have not read the fine print always are. Court dates arrived. The courthouse smelled like old leather and pepper. I wore a suit that swallowed me. My mother sat behind me, hands folded in her lap, looking like she had aged a stitch. My father sat with a newspaper like something heavy enough to be a shield. My sister whispered to a cousin. It all felt like a small-town play. I presented my case. Contracts say things plainly. A bet where one party hands cash to another under explicit terms is a contract, even when it is familial. The judge, a woman with a voice like a bell, listened. She asked a plain question. Did you intend to hold up your son to public humiliation? Did you intend to make him fail with a check? I could have lied and said I had not felt the sting, but truth is an instrument you can play. It rings. I told her what those years felt like, the nights on the couch, the hum of the refrigerator, the way doors closed the moment I turned so that I could not see if anyone was watching. I told her how the bet became a weight. When I finished, the judge leaned forward. The ruling was not poetic. She ordered restitution, $50,000, plus interest, plus costs. It was a mathematical poem. Asterisk, my family thought it would be a wound. They did not expect it to be a ledger that illuminated their own signatures. The check finally made its way back into the narrative. They had to sign paperwork. They had to file declarations. For the first time, the private world of barbed comments and assumed destinies became public. Asterisk, that should have been the end. But revenge, once it breathes, wants more air. Asterisk, you would think that money changes people. Sometimes it does. For me, it did something else. It sharpened memory. It unlatched small people started to remember things they had said like they were poems. My cousin remembered the time he told me, at a family barbecue, that I would always be the one washing dishes. My sister remembered the night she gave an interview to a family friend and described me as the kid who tried. My father remembered the day he placed the check like a crown on the table and told the family, let's see what happens. Asterisk, they thought the lawsuit was a punishment. I thought of it as clarification. Asterisk, the press picked it up. Local news loves a family scandal because it is domestic and public at once. Headlines asked who was a failure and who was a success. Commenters weighed in like they had front row seats. People said cruel things about both of us. I learned that public verdicts are quick and clean in the way of roadside fires. They look horrible from a distance, but they burn without smoldering. Asterisk, but I did not want to humiliate them in front of cameras. I did not want to call them liars under what I wanted was a quiet reckoning. I wanted to build a moment that would not be another spectacle. Asterisk, so I did something small. I withdrew the funds and wrote a check for the exact amount, $50,000, and made it payable to a cause I believed in. A community center. Not in our neighborhood. In a neighborhood where kids had less than we did, where the odds were meaner and laughter thinner. I did it anonymously. My lawyers filed the paperwork. The check cleared. I imagined the sign on the building, the Reyes Community Hub. I imagined kids who never had the luxury of a bet watching someone else make a promise and keep it. I imagined the adults who needed a room to argue without stakes, to learn to read, to breathe. I thought about how petty gifts are the ones that give nothing back to the giver. Asterisk, when the funds were dispersed, I called my father and told him. Asterisk, why? He asked, and there was something that was not anger in his voice, but confusion, like he had misunderstood how to use the world he had in his hands. Asterisk, because I am better at this than you thought, I said, because I can take your bet and make it mean something else. Asterisk, he did not say anything for a long time. The sound of his silence was thick. Asterisk, you could have kept it, he said finally. You could have made it about paying yourself back. Asterisk, I could have, I said, but revenge that lines your pockets is just revenge for the market. I wanted to build something that made us look less like the villains we had invented. Asterisk, my mother cried when she learned. She said I had complicated things. She meant that in the way mothers mean everything, with love and confusion tethered. My sister, who had once laughed in the kitchen, posted a photo of the community center opening months later. In the photo, I looked like someone everyone expected to be different. People left comments that said things like karma and justice and, somewhat more awkwardly, proud. Asterisk, the truth is, I did not do it for the applause. I did it for the geometry of consequence. I wanted them to see how their small cruelty had made a shape in the world. I wanted them to meet the shape and decide if they knew how to sit with it. Asterisk, but this is not a story about magnanimity. This is a story about the sweetest part of revenge, which is the part that is surgical and precise. You can give money as a gift. You can also use it to reframe a story. Asterisk, a few months after the community center opened, there was a small ceremony. The room smelled like fresh paint and chai. Children ran along the hall like they were testing gravity. My family was there. They sat in the front row like a jury. My father had his shoulders straight in a way they had never been when he watched television by himself. My sister clapped at the rhythm of the speeches, as if she were learning how to applaud for the first time. Asterisk, I gave a speech that was intentionally small. I said thank you to the volunteers. I said I believed in the place. I said that money was a tool. The words were simple because life teaches you that simple words can be sharp. Asterisk, after, my sister came up to me. She had lipstick pressed on the back of her hand, a gesture she used when she wanted to seem busy and unremarkable. I watched her as she decided whether to step into kindness or into performance. Asterisk, you could have kept it, she said. You could have shown everyone what you could buy. Asterisk, I bought a room for kids to make noise, I said. That felt like a better possession. Asterisk, she looked at me then, in a way that stripped away the years of comfortable scripts. She whispered, almost before she had decided to be honest. We thought you would fail. Asterisk, we had a long conversation that evening. It was messy. It was full of old jokes that had once kept us together, and new truths that threatened to loosen the seams. She told me she had said things she did not mean. My father said he had bet not on me, but on fear. My mother said she had always wanted me to be softer, to take less pain. They all wanted something soft, and we had been taught to think toughness equaled truth. Asterisk, I did not forgive them in that moment. Forgiveness is a slow work. It is a construction, but I did something else. I told them the truth about what their jokes had meant to me. I told them about nights I spent rehearsing a version of myself that might survive their laughter. I told them how the check had been a hinge on which my life turned. Asterisk, the world is full of people who make bets with other people's futures. They do it at the poker table of family dinners and graduation parties. They do it with the casual cruelty of a weather report. I wanted my story to be a small warning. I wanted it to be a note in the margin of a culture that sometimes confuses prophecy with insight. Asterisk, there were consequences. Some relatives stopped speaking to me for a while because public humiliation is a raw thing that stings on both sides. Others, oddly, apologized. Apology in families is a rare flower. When it does bloom, it is fragile, but alive. Asterisk, I continued working. The company I built did not make us saints. It made me busy. It made me responsible. I learned how to hold the hard truths of the people who depended on me. That burden is older than money. Money simply adds a new set of stakes. Asterisk, people ask me if I felt vindicated the moment the check cleared the account. They imagine fireworks. They imagine the look on my father's face being a singular, perfect moment. Those moments exist, but they are small. Real vindication, the kind that lives past your moment on television, is quieter. It is the look on a child's face when they meet a future they could not previously imagine. It is a mother who can pay for a class she always wanted. It is a man who reconsiders a throwaway joke. Asterisk, I kept the memory of the kitchen for a long time, not as a wound, but as a map. It taught me where I had been cheap and where I had not. It taught me the speed of small choices. The check was a blunt object next to the surgical tools I had learned to use. Asterisk, revenge taught me patience. It taught me that being cruel in return is an easy path. The harder path is to convert a slight into a lesson for everyone in the room. I wanted to make the bet mean something that outlived its original intention. Asterisk. There are nights when I still think of the check, not as a talisman but as a lesson. I keep it in a box in my study with a post-it that says, "Remember why." I look at it when decisions loom, and ask myself if my reaction will build or just satisfy a private thirst. Asterisk, sometimes I think about the architecture of bets. When someone places money on your life, they are trying to compress your story into a single outcome. That compression is an insult to human complexity. It says